Max Verstappen started second at Spa. He was only 3/10 away from pole position. He took the lead at the start. For a few seconds, Red Bull looked ready to fight Mercedes. Then Kimi Antonelli came back on the Kemmel straight. The Mercedes passed Verstappen almost immediately. And from that moment, the telemetry pattern exposed the real problem. Red Bull was not losing because of engine power. It was losing because the car had been built to fly on the straights, while sacrificing the aerodynamic grip Verstappen needed through the corners. That is why the Red Bull could look fast in qualifying. Why it could lead briefly. Why it could produce one spectacular lap. And why Verstappen still finished 11.586 seconds behind the winner. The engine was powerful. The car was quick in a straight line. But Mercedes was faster where the lap could not be recovered. And the most important detail was hidden in what happened after Verstappen fitted the hard tire. Subscribe to the channel. The Belgian Grand Prix did not show a sudden Red Bull collapse. That would be the wrong conclusion. Verstappen qualified second. He finished third. He stood on the podium. Red Bull celebrated its 300th podium in Formula 1. On the surface, that looked like progress. It was progress. But it was also another chapter in a problem that had followed the team throughout the season. The Red Bull Racing 22 did not lack power. In fact, the Red Bull powertrain's engine had been described inside the team as one of the strongest among the new manufacturers. The car could reach impressive maximum speeds. It could perform extremely well in low-drag conditions. It could attack aggressively on long straights. But Formula 1 races are not decided by maximum speed alone. The car must also carry speed through medium and high-speed corners. It must generate enough downforce to protect the tires. It must give the driver confidence when the aerodynamic load changes. And it must remain balanced across an entire stint. That was where Red Bull continued losing to Mercedes. The car had been designed around low drag. That philosophy gave Verstappen excellent straight-line speed. It also removed aerodynamic grip. The Red Bull was fast when the steering wheel was almost straight. It became far less convincing when Verstappen needed the car to hold the road through faster corners. That trade-off explains why the Spa result looked stronger than the actual race pace. Spa rewards low drag. The circuit contains long full-throttle sections. The Kemmel straight can turn straight-line efficiency into overtaking power. The run toward Blanchiment rewards a car that moves cleanly through the air. Those characteristics helped hide part of Red Bull's weakness. The car could look dangerous. It could qualify near the front. It could take the lead at the start. But once the race settled, the missing downforce returned. And Mercedes began controlling the lap. Verstappen started from second. That qualifying result was one of Red Bull's strongest relative performances in several weeks. But even that result required help. His teammate, Isaac Hadjar, provided a deliberate tow. That slipstream reduced aerodynamic resistance. It gave Verstappen extra speed. And it helped place the Red Bull only 0.317 seconds behind Antonelli's pole position. That was a clever team decision. It maximized the strength of the car. But it also revealed the limitation. Red Bull needed to use the straight-line advantage as aggressively as possible because the car could not create enough time through the corners alone. The tow gave Verstappen speed. It did not give the Red Bull more aerodynamic load. It did not improve the balance. It did not solve the grip problem. It simply helped the car disguise the weakness for one qualifying lap. Then the race began. Verstappen launched well. He moved ahead of Antonelli. For a moment, Red Bull had track position. That should have been valuable. Clean air. The ideal line. The ability to control the pace. But the Mercedes responded immediately. Antonelli remained close through the first sector. Then he used the Kemmel straight. The Mercedes accelerated. The gap disappeared. Antonelli retook the lead. And Verstappen never returned to the front. That sequence contained the first major clue. If Red Bull's problem had been engine power, the Kemmel straight should have exposed it brutally. But Red Bull remained one of the fastest cars in maximum speed. The issue was not that the engine could not produce power. The issue was that the Mercedes created more complete performance across the full lap. Antonelli could remain close enough through the corners. Then use the straight to attack. Verstappen could not build enough of a gap before Kemmel. The Red Bull lacked the cornering performance needed to protect the lead. That is a crucial distinction. Straight-line speed is only useful when the car reaches the straight in a strong position. If the driver loses time through the corner before it, the maximum speed cannot recover everything. Imagine two runners. One is faster in a straight line. The other turns more efficiently. Every time the course changes direction, the better turning runner gains distance. When the road becomes straight, the faster runner begins recovering. But the next corner arrives before the complete gap disappears. That was the Red Bull problem. The car could recover pieces of time in a straight line. Mercedes continued gaining through the sections where aerodynamic grip mattered. And Spa contains more of those sections than the speed trap suggests. Eau Rouge, Rydillon, Pujon. The middle sector direction changes. The high-speed load through the second half of the lap. These are not simple engine zones. They demand stability, front-end grip, rear confidence, a predictable aerodynamic platform. Mercedes had more of that. Red Bull had less. That is why the telemetry pointed toward downforce rather than power. The comparison with Racing Bulls made the pattern even clearer. Both teams used the same Red Bull powertrain's engine. But the main Red Bull car appeared near the top of the maximum speed rankings. The Racing Bulls car sat closer to the middle of the field. Same engine family. Different aerodynamic philosophy. That matters. If the engine alone created the speed, both cars should show a more similar pattern. They did not. The main Red Bull was using a lower drag concept. It sacrificed grip for speed. The Racing Bulls package carried a different aerodynamic balance. That comparison became one of the strongest pieces of evidence. Red Bull had not built a weak engine. It had built a car that depended too heavily on reducing resistance. That design helped on the straights. It hurt through the corners. And over a complete race distance, the lost cornering performance became more expensive than the straight line gain. This is why Verstappen could qualify second and still finish more than 11 seconds behind Antonelli. A qualifying lap can hide compromise. The tires are fresh. The battery deployment is aggressive. The fuel load is low. The driver can attack every corner. The tow can create extra speed. A race exposes everything. Heavy fuel, tire degradation, changing balance, longer stints, repeated cornering load. A car with insufficient downforce becomes harder to manage as the race develops. The tires begin sliding more. The driver must wait longer before applying power. The front axle may stop responding. The rear may lose stability. Then the race pace falls. That is what happened to Verstappen. The second half of the race became especially revealing. Red Bull fitted the hard tire. The car developed understeer. Verstappen could not turn the car as aggressively as he needed. He could not push hard enough to fight Leclerc and Antonelli. The front tires did not give him the response. The car resisted rotation. And when a Formula One car understeers, the consequences spread far beyond one corner. The driver turns the steering wheel. The front tires slide. The car misses the ideal line. The apex becomes harder to reach. The driver waits before returning to the throttle. The exit becomes weaker. Then the next straight begins with less momentum. Once again, a cornering problem becomes a straight line problem. This is why maximum speed can mislead. The Red Bull may still record an impressive number at the end of the straight. But if Verstappen arrives there from a weaker exit, he has already lost time. The telemetry would show the difference through the acceleration curve. Mercedes begins the straight with more momentum. Red Bull begins from a compromised position. The Red Bull engine pulls hard. The car recovers part of the loss. Then the braking zone arrives. Mercedes remains ahead. That pattern repeats. Lap after lap. The Red Bull looks fast. The stopwatch says otherwise. And Verstappen had experienced this problem throughout the season. In China, he described the car as undrivable. That was not theatrical frustration. It reflected a genuine lack of grip and balance. The car did not give him the confidence required to attack. Then in Japan, Verstappen said Red Bull was fighting inside the midfield battle rather than fighting properly for the championship. That statement revealed how far the team had fallen from its previous standard. Red Bull had entered the season expecting to challenge Mercedes. Instead, it produced its weakest pace beginning since 2015. The team had slipped behind Mercedes in qualifying and race pace. At several circuits, it had also fallen behind McLaren. That was not caused by one poor weekend. It was a season-long aerodynamic limitation. Red Bull admitted the car had significant shortcomings. Those shortcomings were concentrated in the areas where the low-drag philosophy extracted its price. Medium-speed corners, high-speed corners, sections where the driver needed downforce more than maximum speed. The Red Bull could look spectacular on a straight, then lose the advantage through the next sequence. That is why Verstappen's driving could keep the car near the front without changing the underlying hierarchy. He could maximize the start. He could qualify aggressively. He could defend. He could use the power unit effectively. But he could not manufacture downforce from the cockpit. A driver can adjust the line. He can change the braking point. He can manage the throttle. He cannot create aerodynamic load that the car does not possess. That limitation becomes especially painful for Verstappen. His greatest strength is commitment. He attacks the entry. He rotates the car aggressively. He uses the front axle to position the rear. He wants a car that responds immediately. A car with understeer removes that weapon. The driver turns. The car waits. The front slides. The rear remains behind the desired rotation. The entire corner becomes slower. Verstappen can compensate to a point. He can brake later. He can use more steering. He can alter the line. But every compensation creates tire temperature. More steering angle creates more scrub. More scrub creates more heat. More heat damages grip. Then the understeer becomes worse. That is how the problem can grow during a stint. The driver fights the car. The fight damages the tires. The damaged tires make the car harder to drive. The cycle continues. Mercedes did not need to fight that cycle to the same extent. Antonelli could carry more speed through the corners. He could protect the tires. He could reach the straight with better momentum. Then the Mercedes power unit and hybrid system continued the acceleration. That complete chain created the race advantage. This is why saying Verstappen kept losing pace to Mercedes because of the engine would be inaccurate. The Red Bull engine was not the central weakness. The chassis was. The aerodynamic concept was. The lack of load was. And that distinction matters because the solution is far more complicated. An engine deficit can sometimes be addressed through deployment, reliability improvements, or permitted development. An aerodynamic concept affects the entire car. The floor. The wings. The suspension platform. The cooling arrangement. The balance between front and rear. The way the car reacts to ride height. The tire behavior. The driver confidence. Everything connects. Red Bull could add more wing. That might create grip. It would also create drag. The straight line advantage would shrink. The car could revise the floor. That might produce more efficient downforce. But the floor must remain stable over bumps, curbs, and elevation changes. Spa is especially demanding because the car compresses through Eau Rouge, unloads over Rydillen, then travels through several high-speed sections. The aerodynamic platform must remain predictable. If it stalls or loses load unexpectedly, the driver cannot commit. That may be even worse than having consistently low downforce. Predictability matters. Verstappen can adapt to a known limitation. He cannot trust a car that changes behavior suddenly. That is why balance has been one of Red Bull's recurring complaints. Not only insufficient grip, inconsistent grip. A car may produce acceptable load in one corner, then lose the front in another. It may behave differently as the fuel burns. It may become unstable when the wind changes. The driver begins questioning how much commitment is safe. That uncertainty costs time. And it costs more time during a race than qualifying. In qualifying, Verstappen can accept more risk. 1 lap. Fresh tires. Maximum preparation. In the race, he must repeat the performance for an entire stint. The car must remain manageable. The tires must survive. The balance must remain inside a usable window. Red Bull's window was too narrow. Mercedes' window was wider. That is another hidden advantage. A wider operating window allows the team to perform under more conditions. Different tire compounds. Different temperatures. Different fuel loads. Different wind directions. Different race situations. The car does not need the perfect setup. It remains competitive. Red Bull needed more precision. A small change could move the car outside the window. That made setup decisions more difficult. Add front wing, and the rear could become unstable.